that Michael Bumpus was able to watch a lot of tape on Ernest Jones IV so that he could tell us what this trade means. So, Bump.
Yeah.
What did you see?
My initial reaction, I would imagine, is if like one day my daughter's 10 years old and she's going to date one day, unfortunately, and she's going to bring home a young man, maybe someone I know, and I'm going to think, I've always liked that kid. That's what I thought when I saw the Ernest Jones thing. Like, I've always liked him. I remember him with the Rams, and he gave us some fits.
League.
Yeah, I remember that guy. He's cool.
Nice.
So I looked him up. First by the numbers, at 4.5 sacks last year. He's played in 90% of the Titans snaps this year. 98% against the Buffalo Bills. If he plays this week, he'll go back-to-back weeks against the Bills. That's weird.
I don't want that.
And then 100% of the snaps against the Colts. I put on the film and I go, oh, man, he looks bigger. Then I look at his size. Baker 6'2", 232. Jones 6'2", 233. So he's not necessarily bigger, but he plays bigger. Mm-hmm. He's more of the old school, get downhill, put your hands on the guards and tackles trying to get you and be a bit more violent. I think Baker has more shiftiness to him, and I think that's what made him attractive to the Seahawks. They're saying, look, we need linebackers who can get downhill and be good in space. Baker got downhill at times, not consistently enough, and was better in space. This move right here makes you more physical in the box, and I like it. I watched most of his snaps against the Jets last week, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's stalemating around 2 or 3 yards down the field instead of 5 or 6 is what we've seen a few times from Baker. He uses his hands, and he's a type of tackler, old school, to where he's not necessarily leading with his head, but he's like trying to hit you with his chest and wrap you up because he's so big and strong. I like the move, man. These guys are proactive. They are not waiting. I honestly thought that they wouldn't make a move at backer until maybe the offseason and say, you know what, let's just teach these guys, let's teach them our ways and our scheme, and we'll be fine, and then we'll draft somebody. Nah, you know what I think it is, too, also? They saw the Niners go down, and they're looking at their situation and saying, they might not be healthy for the next, 3-4 weeks. We have an opportunity here to get a couple games on them. Let's go and tighten up this defense.
You also simply, it's much like I feel about the offensive line, you simply cannot continue your season with a serious face and big boy pants on with the run defense you have. But if you find that you need someone else in order to help your run defense, you simply have to do it, especially for a 4th-round pick, which I know is not nothing. But I do want to say that Brady Henderson also reports the Seahawks do have an extra 4th-rounder. Yeah. So while you do have to consider that Ernest Jones is in the final year of a deal, and you will have to, if you really like him, you'll have to extend him. Otherwise, he becomes a free agent after this season. I feel slightly better about giving up a 4th-round pick, assuming he doesn't stay, knowing you have another. Right. I don't feel great about it, but I am just letting you know some background.
I also think that linebackers, everyone has a reputation in the league. Players, coaches, schemes. I'm sure linebackers look at the Mike McDonald scheme and what he did in Baltimore and say, I wouldn't mind playing in that. Look at the production you got out of Smith and Queen and all those guys over there. So I'm pretty sure that's part of the thought process for Ernest Jones. I'm just thinking moving forward, right? I'm sure his agent, because when things go down like this, you're talking to your agents, and your agents are very knowledgeable if you have the right one. They're going to tell you about how you think, or they think you fit into their system. I've talked to McDonald. I've talked to this guy and this guy. We think this is going to be a good fit. This is why. It's not just, hey, they want you. They're paying this. Let's go over there. You got traded. No, it's, look, this is how you fit into this situation. And that you do your homework. You look at Mike McDonald and what he's done, and he becomes more attractive to these linebackers. I also want to point out the homie from Wally from Snoqualmie, the homie, he points something out. It also sends a message to the locker room.
Yes.
If you're not doing your job, we will move you. Now, after the trade deadline, they can't move you, but we will get rid of you during the offseason or find somebody else. This is a business. There's no real loyalty to anybody right now but Geno and maybe Ken Walker and a couple guys on defense, Reek and Devin Witherspoon. I like the message it sends, but I also think that they must see something on film and say he's a better fit than Baker. What I've seen so far is that he's just more of a physical type of guy.
Daniel Jeremiah said something really interesting. It was with Brock and Salk. He said something like, look, it's hard to find linebackers in today's NFL because of that kind of transition into more coverage guys as opposed to, big, like no neck, neck roll type linebackers. That because of that transition, it is hard to find guys who can do both, who can help you in coverage. Like, by the latter years of his career, Bobby Wagner, a future Hall of Famer, was not excellent in coverage. He was still a great tackler. He was still a great linebacker, and he would frankly be better than any of the options they had here. But I think Seattle wanted to find guys who were a little quicker and a little younger and cheaper. Is Ernest Jones someone who's a little bit of both?
You're giving up coverage skills with Ernest. He can still do it. I'm watching film. He's getting into space. He's getting to the right spots. But if Baker had anything on him, he was a bit more fluid and natural in space. But I think what we've seen so far this year is that you need that box to get nasty. Mm-hmm. And now you already got Roy Robertson Harris who joined the squad. I saw improvement on that defensive line. Leonard Williams has been having a good year. Thank goodness for Byron Murphy being back. That kid is playing some good ball. And your edge rushes are good. So now, first level, you seem like you're good for the year. Hopefully, we'll see if they make another move. Now you get to that second level, and you got to bring that violence, because if they are going to be able to do their job, if they are going to try to keep these guys clean, if they're going to cause havoc in the box, second level has to clean it up, and I think Ernest can do that. You're going to lose a step or two in pass coverage. Yeah. That's just not his game. His body, I mentioned the height and the weight are the same, but the way it looks is just different with him. He's more of an old school backer. I like this move a lot.
Text line is open, 866-979-3776. If you guys have thoughts about this trade, how are you feeling about the trade? If you have additional questions, we're going to be talking about this until we get to headline rewrites. I also want to transition to the point that Wally made. He said, as you mentioned, it sends a message. They have now made 2 moves ahead of the trade deadline. What does it tell you about where John Schneider's mindset might be?
I think their mindset is we're constantly trying to get better, and there's a real opportunity here to take a step in the division. I can't wait to see it one game at a time, right? And when we were looking at this matchup with the Buffalo Bills, I pointed out, all right, well, this is where these linebackers can shine a bit, because they're probably going to be asked to spy Josh Allen, and I think they move better. Someone pointed out that on the text lines that numbers say that Ernest is better in pass coverage than Baker. And I go, okay, look at the numbers. That's fine. Look at the player and the way that they move. I'm watching film on both of these guys, and when it comes to flipping your hips and running and matching up with guys, Baker looks more fluid. Numbers are always, or not always, but a lot of the times numbers are influenced by circumstances and who you're playing or whatnot. That's a good stat. We can lean on that. I'm leaning on what I see on film, and Baker's just more fluid in space. I'm not saying Ernest can't get it done. But this tells this team that we're trying to win right now. Yes, you are. You do have 1 or 2, maybe 3 years to try to figure this thing out. I prefer 1 or 2 to figure this thing out. But figuring it out means we're going to make moves in season to get better. We're not just going to sit back and say we are who we are. Let's coach them up. You have to coach guys up, but when you have an opportunity like this, you got to take it, man, because I kid you not, Stacey, I really thought, I like that kid. I remember that kid from the Browns. I remember him making plays. I remember him being a free agent and watching film on him and saying, why not take a stab at this dude? So, yeah, it's a great move, man. They've gotten better on defense in a couple of weeks fairly quickly, and they addressed the 2 spots where we were concerned the most, the rotation on the defensive line and then just the violence on that second level. I think secondary-wise, these guys are good to go when everyone is healthy.
Someone said, I feel like a 4th is a lot to give up. The Kansas City Chiefs just acquired DeAndre Hopkins. That was earlier this morning around like 5 a.m. Expected DeAndre Hopkins for a 4th-round pick. It was a conditional 4th-round pick, but I am going to throw in this idea of it's also about what you need, what that other team is willing to part ways with, and then about the money that you're taking on, too. Good trade for the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs front office is a brilliant front office who's just as much to credit for anything else as is Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid individually. I think, though, that even then, I'm not upset with this, nor do I think it's an overpay. I think it's a small risk.
Yeah.
Right? A 4th-round pick can turn into KJ Wright. Yep. A 4th-round pick could turn into any number of players around the league. Brock pointing out, I mean, that's what was given up for like Amari Cooper. Like you've seen pretty big names moved for around that type of compensation, but it's about what Seattle needs, what they think will help, and you don't get to be the major winner of every single trade.
No, you said it's what they need. And going into this week, even last week, everyone felt like there's 3 spots that needed help. That offensive line needed help. What do? You play Christian Haynes a bit more, throw Michael Jarrell in there, and let's see what happens. Now, that was because of Forsythe being banged up, but you got an opportunity to see some younger guys and how they're going to develop. What else did you need? You need help on the defensive line. Hankins should not be playing 70% of the snaps. You need that rotation there. Keep guys fresh and healthy. What do? You bring in Roy Robinson Harris. All right, the linebackers. We've been talking about linebackers and getting downhill and being violent at the point of attack, and they go and address that. A for effort, man. We'll see how this thing works out, but I applaud the efforts by John Schneider and maybe the influence from Mike McDonald by looking at this team and saying, this is where we are weak. Coaching can only take you so far sometimes. You have to have the ability, and they made the necessary moves. Now we'll see if it all works out. Nothing is guaranteed. There are going to be people, if this doesn't work out the way that everyone wants to and Ernest doesn't come in here and look like an all-pro, there are people who are going to call this a dumb decision. I think it would be even more dumb to do absolutely nothing and just sit there if you have an opportunity to do something. If they were to go out and try to ship Baker and Dotson and no one is biting, it is what it is. We would never know that. Some people would assume that they're not doing anything. But they are being proactive, and that's what I appreciate the most, because there is an opportunity. I'm looking at these Niners. If they're going to rely on Ricky Pearsall to lead this team in receptions the next 3-4 weeks, they're going to be in trouble. If they're going to rely on Brock Purdy to take it to the next level, maybe he can do it. I'm interested. I want to see, but it's looking like the NFC West is for the taking right now.